All right, welcome to our viewers in the United States and all around the world. It is Thursday, July 1st, and we do have breaking news. Just moments ago, Trump Organization CFO Alan Weisselberg surrendered to prosecutors to face criminal tax charges. A grand jury in Manhattan indicted the longtime corporate money man along with the Trump Organization itself. Weisselberg is expected to appear in court this afternoon when the indictments are unsealed.
Now, these are the first charges in a years-long investigation by prosecutors in New York. At this time, there's no indication Donald Trump or members of his family have been charged. CNN's Kara Scannell is outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan with the very latest for us this morning. Kara, good morning.
Good morning, Erica. Yeah, just a few moments ago, Alan Weisselberg, the chief financial officer of the Trump Organization, surrendered to authorities just around the corner from here. He is going to face charges this afternoon, an indictment that's related to tax crimes. Now, we don't know the details of the indictment just yet because it will become public later today. But this investigation has been looking into compensation and benefits that he received as a top official at the Trump Organization. That includes a rent-free apartment, company cars, bonuses, and school tuition for at least one of his grandchildren. This investigation has been going on for years. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court in the DA, Cy Vance Jr.'s effort to get the former president's tax returns, both his personal returns and his business returns. This is all culminating today with the charges against Alan Weisselberg and the Trump Organization. As you noted, the former president, Donald Trump, is not expected to be charged, nor any members of his family. But this investigation remains ongoing and active, sources tell CNN. Now, the Trump Organization will also have an attorney in court this afternoon. Well, they are expected to enter a plea of not guilty to these charges. The big question here will be the breadth of the charges. What exactly are they alleging? How much money is involved? Because that goes to how severe the potential penalties can be, particularly for Alan Weisselberg. Now, he has not cooperated at all as part of this investigation. The big question here is also, does that change as this goes forward? I think we'll learn a lot more this afternoon when we have a sense of just how serious these charges are and what penalties he might be facing. Erica?
And Kara, any more information this morning from the Trump camp?
You know, we have not heard anything from the Trump camp, and we were expecting them to issue some sort of statement overnight to address the pending charges after they were informed that the company was under indictment. We have not heard any statement. I mean, the former president issued a statement on Monday where he was saying that the types of crimes or the practices that are being prosecuted, he called them standard business practices. So we're expecting a robust defense from them. They have been, I think we believe they're going to be arguing that these types of cases are normally handled in a civil manner, and this is being criminal. He has said this investigation is politically motivated. He has called it a witch hunt. I expect we'll hear a lot more this afternoon. Erica?
As far as we know, this is Alan Weisselberg and the company itself, but there are a lot of questions, obviously, about the former president's children, Eric and Don Jr., still at the company. Is there a sense that they could potentially be named at some point?
Well, this investigation is ongoing, and as we've been reporting, it is very broad in nature. They have looked into the hush money payments that were made to silence Stormy Daniels, who had alleged that she had an affair with former President Donald Trump. It also includes looking into other types of tax treatments, different deductions and expenses that the company has taken. And it includes how they valued their properties, whether they misled banks, whether they misled insurance companies, and whether they misled tax authorities in those values. So this has all been under scrutiny. It had really narrowed its focus in recent weeks on this issue of compensation and whether the Trump Organization was not reporting income that they were providing to employees, somehow, and essentially hiding it from the tax authorities. But this might be the first move that we see. I mean, this investigation is ongoing. What also sometimes happens in a case like this is when they bring these initial charges, it can influence other people's willingness to cooperate. And I think that is the question here. Now that Alan Weisselberg is indicted, it's no longer an open question or a looming possibility. It is reality. And so he will then make a decision of whether he wants to fight these charges or if he thinks that there's anything in it for him to cooperate. And that will depend, I think, in part on just the severity of these charges and what he thinks he has in terms of evidence to give to prosecutors as part of their ongoing investigation. Erica?
Kara, thank you. Let's dig a little deeper now into what to expect. Joining me is CNN senior legal Ellie Honig. So we were just going over this a little bit with Kara, but, the question today is we know about Alan Weisselberg. So give us a better sense of, of the who right now in terms of who's being charged today, because it's him, but it's also the company.
Yeah, Erica, big day. We're going to learn a lot of important details, but there are some things that we do know already. Today's indictment is going to charge 2 defendants. Now, the first defendant is the Trump Organization itself. Yes, prosecutors can indict corporations, even though they're not people, but it's important to know there are only financial penalties. Now, this could mean the end of the Trump Organization, ultimately, if they get convicted, but there's nobody that can go to jail based on a corporate charge. The second defendant, however, is an individual. It's Alan Weisselberg, the longtime chief financial officer of the Trump Organization. If convicted, of course, as an individual, he can go to jail. He's going to be a focal point because, as Kara just said, prosecutors are clearly trying to put pressure on Alan Weisselberg to flip him and get him to cooperate.
And so what types of crimes are we talking about here?
So there's a lot of details we're going to get out of the indictment today. But the gist of it is tax fraud. Let me lay it out. I prepared a little demonstrative. Let's say in a normal company you had an employee whose annual salary was $100,000. And the person was paid through normal paychecks like you or I would get $100,000. When tax time comes, they are going to pay taxes, both the employee and the company, on $100,000. The general gist of the allegation here, we're using hypothetical round numbers, is the Trump org, if they had an employee who made $100,000, what they would do is they would pay, let's say, $50,000 by a paycheck, but the other $50,000 through fringe benefits, tuition payments, cars, and rent. And therefore, when it came tax time, they're only paying taxes on $50,000. So this right here, that hypothetical $50,000 that they're paying through fringe benefits and then not paying taxes on, that is the fraud. So that's the gist of the allegations we're going to see today.
So, but correct me if I'm wrong. One of the things we've talked about a lot, I feel like in the last several weeks, is that it's kind of rare that you're bringing charges solely on fringe benefits.
It is. And if you actually look at other examples of other corporations who've been charged criminally, you get a sense. BP, formerly British Petroleum, was charged in connection with the Deepwater Horizon disaster where people were killed, where there was a massive oil spill. You had Tyson Poultry was charged with enormous environmental violations. And then you had Volkswagen was criminally indicted as a corporation for violating emission standards, for installing cheat devices in over 500,000 cars. I mean, these are high level examples, but it does give you a sense of scale that if we're talking about fringe benefits, that's on the lower end of scale that I've seen corporate indictments.
So what does that make you think then about what could actually be in the indictment?
Well, here's a couple things I'm going to be looking for sure. The Trump Organization, despite all the, cover of being this glamorous organization, is really just a small family-held corporation. I'm going to be looking for 2 big things today. First of all, does the indictment mention any of the Trumps who served as VP, executive VP, and owner? It's not going to say their names, but there could be references, executive 1, VP 2, that kind of thing. The other thing I'm looking for is, what is the loss amount? How much tax loss are we talking about on Alan Weisselberg? Because New York state law has a huge range of potential penalties depending on how much tax fraud. It could be anything from a little misdemeanor. No one's going to flip on that, up to charges carrying 25-year maximums. So I'm going to be looking for that as soon as the indictments come out.
As you mentioned, you said no one's going to flip on a little misdemeanor.
Right.
Now, we were told from Alan Weisselberg's attorney he was not going to cooperate. Obviously, this is where we are today. He could still choose to do so.
He absolutely could. And look, this is clearly what the prosecutors on the case are trying to do. I will tell you from my own experience, Erica, I've had defendants who have sworn up and down, I'll never flip. Lawyers have told me he'll never flip. When you see that indictment, when you get hit with that piece of paper, state of New York versus Alan Weisselberg, that can be a game changer. That said, time's running out. You can flip at any point in a proceeding, but they're on the clock here. And the earlier someone flips, the better for the person who's cooperating and for prosecutors.
He has been with this company so long, right?
Yep.
Since the 70s, 20 plus years as CFO. The amount of knowledge he would have is deep, to put it mildly.
Indeed. If you look at the inner circle, I mean, one of these things is not like the other. He's the only person whose last name is not Trump, who's really been on the inner circle. He's been with them going back decades. He has been described by people who know the organization as the financial gatekeeper, the guy who knew where every nickel went. So he is going to be so key. Let's see what happens with him. Let's see how much of an incentive he has to flip, and let's see where his loyalties lie. Do they sit with the Trumps, or do they sit with trying to keep himself out of prison?
All right, we will be watching. Ellie, appreciate it as always.